Since you're in the military summary channel, in this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Zelensky. During his interview with The Atlantic, he made lots of very interesting statements worth attention. I'd rather not make any agreement at all than force my people to accept a bad one. More of his points in an interview with The Atlantic. I believe there is no greater victory for Trump than stopping the war between Russia and Ukraine. That's number one of for his legacy. The most advantageous situation for Trump is to do this before the midterm elections. So this is the main point of Zelensky. I would like to remind you that the midterm elections in the United States of America are going to take place in November 2026, and Zelensky believes, or he wants, Democrats to return back to the Senate of the United States of America. That can change the situation first for Ukraine, especially when talking about military supply and intelligence sharing. Yes, he wants fewer deaths, but frankly for him this is a victory, a political one. Zelensky expresses a willingness to negotiate, but only under fair conditions, and states that it must be a lasting peace, not a quick agreement for the sake of politics. I'm not against the idea of a referendum or elections, but only if it doesn't mean accepting an unfavorable agreement or losing territory. The first step towards peace must be security guarantees from the United States and Europe, which stipulates that after the ceasefire, Ukraine will be protected from future aggression. So this is the position of the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, and as you can see, he changed his mind. He changes his mind almost every single day. And the most important thing, that the United States of America, according to media, most likely is going to quit the negotiation process, because once again, midterm elections are going to take place very soon. This is the first thing. And the second thing, Trump obviously wants to get some points for the Republican Party, and most likely these points he's going to get from the Middle East. Trump may leave Ukraine talks in the coming weeks, according to The Atlantic. At the same time, the peacemaker could blame Kiev or Moscow or both for the failed diplomacy. This situation is developing because Trump is rethinking Washington's political intensivities in the diplomatic process. Meanwhile, Zelensky insists that the conflict be resolved with Trump's help. Zelensky believes that ending the war could be a major political victory for Trump and help him in the elections if it happens before the midterm. So this is the most important point. By this situation, by this conflict, Zelensky is trying to make the situation when the president of the United States of America will lose points before the midterm elections than winning them. Another important update is Russia has submitted proposal to the US for expanding economic cooperation. The document outlines 7 areas for aligning Russia and the US economic interests after the conflict with Ukraine is resolved. Long-term contracts for the modernization of the Russian aircraft fleet, joint ventures in the oil and gas sector, many other things, cooperation in nuclear energy, return to dollar settlements, joint production of strategic raw materials, and many other things. I would like to remind you that Zelensky several days ago stated that there is an agreement, secret agreement between the Russian Federation and the United States of America worth 12 or $1.2 trillion. So most likely Zelensky was talking about this one. Another important thing is that yesterday was a meeting on the Ramstein formula, and according to information we have, Ukraine will receive $3 billion or euro in coming days. During the latest meeting of the contact group on the Ukraine's defense, new military aid package worth nearly $3 billion were announced, said the Ukrainian Defense Minister Mikhail Fedorov. The bulk of the funds will consist of an air defense systems, drones, including long-range drones and interceptor drones. So as you can see, the Western countries are going to give Ukraine $3 billion for the spring and early summer military campaigns. But there are still huge problems with air defense. There are still problems with missiles to these systems, and the NATO countries currently don't have possibilities to protect and to cover the sky of Ukraine. Ukraine Defense Secretary John Healey stated that together we pledged a total of $35 billion worth of new military aid for Ukraine today. So which means that the special military operation, the conflict and the war in Ukraine are going to continue within this 2027. Now let's discuss the situation in Ukraine. During the previous night, both the Russians and the Ukrainians continued attacking each other. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation stated that yesterday in the evening, the Russians brought down 66 Ukraine's drones over mainly over Rostov-on-Kursk regions. Furthermore, during the night, overnight, the Russians brought down 58 drones. Most of them were brought down over the Volgograd region. So once again, the third day in a row, the Ukrainians are attacking deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation, and as we can see, the Ukrainians are trying to attack in this area using these roads of attacks. It's very interesting situation because if you remember, yesterday we discussed that Ukrainians attacked the settlement by the name of Kotlubany, and here we can see a very powerful, very big, large main missile and artillery directorate arsenal in Volgograd Oblast, which stores large quantities of rockets, artillery shells, and other explosive materials. So the Ukrainians were attacking this territory, and the sources reported that the Ukrainians were attacking this territory not just with the drones but also using Flamingo cruise missiles. For example, this is the video of how exactly the Ukrainians were launching the Flamingo missiles. The sources reported that the Ukrainians launched 6 Flamingo missiles, cruise missiles, which went on the targets of this ammo depot that we've just discussed. And I would like to point to attention that yesterday the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation stated that they managed to bring down just 5 out of 6, which means that there are very high chances that at least one Flamingo missile managed to get the target. And there were explosions, by the way, in the territory of that arsenal. Furthermore, I would like to point to attention that yesterday there were lots of updates on the matter of some military exercises around this Oreshnik missile system. So a very interesting situation, as you can see right now, is happening around these missiles, around the southern parts of the Russian Federation. Let's wait and see what is going to be next. As for the Russian side, during the previous night, they also attacked the territory of Ukraine with drones, mainly with drones. This morning, the Minister of Defense of Ukraine reported that 155 drones were used by Russians to attack the territory of Ukraine, and most of them were attacking the territories in the southern regions as well. The sources reported that the Russians were attacking the city of Odessa, and this is also the second day in a row when the Russians are attacking this settlement. We have lots of videos and lots of pictures where we can see how exactly the Russians were attacking the territory of the city. And for example, in this picture we can see local resident report that the strike hit a substation in Odessa. Here we can see more attacks in the city of Odessa, lots of explosions, something big was destroyed, as we can see. Most likely the Russians are attacking possible positions of rockets, missiles, and drones of the armed forces of Ukraine that Ukrainians are planning or are going to use in coming days to continue attacking the southern regions of the Russian Federation. So in this video, most likely we can see the attack on the substation. Here, so lots of explosions were recorded 2 days in a row. I would like to remind you the Russians are attacking the settlement. For example, yesterday we received these videos and these pictures, so there are very heavy clashes, there are very heavy attacks exactly in this direction.
Traditional keyword research is so outdated. You're missing out big time if you're not using SEMrush.
Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of updates from the Zaporozhye direction. The sources continue reporting that there are very heavy clashes in the Zaporozhye area, and the sources reported that as a result of clashes, the Ukrainians during the previous several days managed to improve their positions significantly. Neutral mappers pro-Ukrainian sources reported that Ukrainians continue counter-offensive, and during the previous days, the Ukrainians managed to regain control over the villages of Verbova, Stepova, and advanced in Vishnyovo and began fighting for Klinovska and Ternovoye. Furthermore, the same sources stated that Ukrainians managed to improve their positions around Dobropolye and Priluki. So as of now, we haven't received anything that can confirm this. We're talking about videos or, let's say, more reliable sources, but when summarizing everything that we can find in the internet, we can say that Ukrainians are trying to attack in this area, and as a result of clashes, the Ukrainians during the previous days managed to to improve their position significantly along this yellow line by taking under control or by beginning fighting for these villages and settlements. And this is a very important thing because, as you can see, Ukrainians managed to improve their positions not just to the north of the main defense layer, but the Ukrainians managed to answer the main defense layer, the first defense layer of the Zaporozhye direction. And furthermore, according to neutral pro-Ukrainian sources, during the previous days, the Ukrainians restored control over the settlement of Priluki, Ukrainians restored control over the settlement of Dobropolye, and Ukrainians continue and are keeping advancing further in the eastern direction towards the villages of Zlagoda and Salotki. So, based on this configuration, on these roads of attacks, we can make a conclusion that now the Ukrainians are tasked to encircle the Russians who are currently located in this pocket. They're trying to cut them, they're trying to cut supply lines, to encircle them probably, and so on. Of course, the Russians see everything. The main problem for the Russians is complete absence of the Starlink terminals and Starlink communication. The Russians are trying to find a solution how to fix this. The source reported that they started with using some Wi-Fi hubs or Wi-Fi equipment. They're trying to establish these roads through the line of combat contact, and some sources are saying that at some parts of the front line they managed to recover the situation, but the Ukrainians, but obviously not for 100%, the Ukrainians will use this strategical advantage situation with the purpose to at least restore control over the territories between the settlement of Dobropolye and, let's say, Voskresenka. So this territory could be recaptured by the Ukrainians in coming days or months before the beginning of the spring military campaign. And obviously this counter-offensive operation can maybe not ruin but create some problems for the Russians in their implementing of the offensive operations towards the city of Zaporozhye and the city of Orekhov. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Konstantinovka direction. During the previous nights, we received small changes on the ground. These are the changes on the ground between the dates. This is the end of the 12th and this is the beginning of the 13th of February of 2026. According to pro-Ukrainian mappers, the Russians began infiltrating the city of Konstantinovka from its southwestern part. The Russians are trying to increase the number of soldiers in this area, and the Russians, as the Russians in the area of the city of Liman, are trying to establish complete control over the territory along these red lines. So this is the first thing that the Russians are tasked to finish, to complete, and then they will be able to continue infiltration towards the central part of the city of Konstantinov. Because of now the Russians, as you can see, are still at the beginning of the battle for the city itself. As for the Slaviansk direction, we haven't received anything special. As for the Liman direction, during the previous night, we received lots of changes on the ground. These are the changes on the map between the dates. This is the end of the 12th of February. This is the beginning of the 13th of February. The Russians improved their positions, and as you can see, the Russians are about to finish the battle for this pocket. Most likely coming days, the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back from this territory completely, and the Russians, as you can see, improved their positions significantly on the territory of the village of Drobышeva. In coming days, the Russians will intensify their offensive operation with the purpose also to establish complete control over this red line. And from this very moment, the major battle for the city of Liman begins. This video was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians with FPV drones in the northern part of Drobышeva and along this dense network of the fortifications to the northeast of the city of Liman. So the battle for the city of Liman, the major battle, is approaching. As for the northern directions, during the previous 12 hours, we received lots of videos of how Russians were attacking with drones and missiles temporary deployment points of the armed forces of Ukraine. These days, we start receiving lots of updates from this area, which means that the Russians have deployed significant number of forces, especially FPV drone operators, and now the Russians are hunting and attacking Ukrainian positions in this region with the purpose to ease the advance of the Russian forces on the ground. And that's it for the short video. Military with Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.